Here we go. Hey, everyone. Josh here. And this is a special episode for a couple of reasons. One, we couldn't tell people how to spell you creative, so we changed it. And we've pivoted pretty dramatically. And this is now episode 1/6 of...
So, maybe.
of something. Of the CreateQuest Podcast. Because that has some nice almost rhyming to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But today, as always, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Bevan.
Hello.
And we're going to let someone else make a special introduction right now. So, Mike, take it away.
All right. My name is Michael Orwick, and I have been following these two gentlemen since their very first podcast and even before that. And I'm excited to join the discussion and see if there's anything I can add to these two very clever guys. So, without interrupting too much.
Don't worry about it. I mean, yeah, interrupt all you want. I mean, can you add too much? What the hell? I mean, look at the paintings in the background, people. If you're on the video, he's an amazing landscape painter in Oregon, an instructor. Where do you instruct at?
Oregon Society of Artists.
Yeah,
and also workshops and various other things.
Amazing. So you're already instructing people on how to be amazing artists. Yeah, love your website. Right. What's your website?
MichaelOrwick.com is my portfolio site, and OrwickArts.com is my kind of sales site.
Awesome. So that's Michael and ORWICK.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh, for that very announcer-like intro into CreateQuest.
In a world.
Right. It's this is going to be a fun one. By the time we get to podcast 6, it's like, to heck with propriety. We're just going to go for it. And today's podcast, we're going to be talking about style. Yay. And, well, the first thing we're going to start off with is, what is the problem with style?
Or is there a problem with style?
Yeah. I got a problem with your style, okay? I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. So this kind of problem that I'm thinking of with style is when you look at an artist that's just starting out and they have some obvious mistakes, proportional, color, whatever, technical mistakes, pick any medium. And then you call them out on this mistake. You say, hey, you could do better in this way, blah, blah, blah. Be constructive. Yeah, this kind of thing. And they say, well, that's my style. This is what I think of as the problem with style. And in our current society, individuals tend to put style first rather than anything else.
All right. Style, I think, is easy to use as an excuse. That's the real issue there. And people don't want to focus on the real fundamentals that make art good. And yes, today we are, typically we speak a lot on creativity or creative practices in general. Today we are speaking mostly about visual art. So this is something a little bit different. But especially in visual art, people like to skip the fundamentals. They like to draw the easy things. They want to move to Z before they've even touched A, B, and C. It's lazy.
Yeah, style should be something that you arrive at. And it takes work and a lot of time. And you need to have those fundamentals of whatever it is. If it's music, if it's writing, if it's painting, drawing, whatever it is, working on those fundamentals first and arriving at style and not the other way around, I think is really important. And like you said, I think we all want that instantaneous result. We want that quick win. And we want to arrive fully formed.
Exactly. So. Yeah, we don't want to go through the pain of I suck. Oh, I did something good. I suck. It's like everybody wants to avoid that process, right? I want to get to the end. I saw all the beer commercials, and it only took 60 seconds for the guy to work and then actually be an amazing, accomplished person, right? It doesn't work that way. Stop being lazy. Get to work. Go through your fundamentals. It's going to suck at the beginning. Understand that. But yeah, once you're working, then things will kind of come out of it. Yeah. Wanting the goal before putting in the effort.
And really focusing on the easy wins without really aiming any higher. I think that's another problem that pops up a whole lot. And I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying this, I'm sure. But whenever artists decide to start drawing and they focus exclusively on anime and manga, you're cheating.
Wait, how is that cheating? Because I love drawing manga. Manga. Yeah. How is it cheating?
You're saying like they should be focusing on the fundamentals of figure drawing and portraiture before they just go in and exaggerate all the features and overly simplify.
Well, they're oversimplifying without any understanding of form whatsoever. And that bothers me because they're flattening things in a way that makes it look like it was drawn by a child. I'm sorry. But am I? No, I'm not that sorry. Because even drawing 2D, you need to understand the third dimension. You need to understand the depth.
Exactly. Yeah. This brings up, okay, when you first start out, you don't understand the subtleties of what makes good art good, right? You could go into a museum and you see all these paintings. You're like, oh, it's just a bunch of paintings. I don't really understand the difference between each, besides that one's got boobs and that one doesn't, this kind of thing. But with the difference between something like you just started manga and Kim Jong-gi, right? You're going to see, it's like, whoa, okay, there's something else going on here. And you don't get to Kim Jong-gi level without putting in just a shit ton of effort and knowing proportion, form, and three-dimensionality so well that the guy could draw it with his feet. It's ridiculous, okay? There's so much effort there, and you can see it in his work. Go, Michael, go.
Go.
Well, I was going to say that within every genre, even manga, you have the masters and stuff. And I think a lot of it goes back to, again, the fundamentals, the rules, the guidelines of good art creation. So he knows when he's breaking those rules and he knows why he's breaking those rules. And that does become part of his style when it's done purposely. If you're just doing it to make a pretty picture that is, a copy or overly simple because you can do it repeatedly, I don't know if you are developing your style because you're not challenging yourself. A lot of people do cap out. I do notice, I have a 16-year-old daughter and I do know a lot of her friends draw the manga style and they do kind of cap out. They're like, okay, I got to this level. I can make a pretty girl with flowy hair and I'm just going to do this over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I'm done. I've maxed out.
Yeah. Again, it's like avoidance of the effort. That's all the time I want to put into it.
Well, you said something there that, they repeat and simplify because they can. I think the issue there, though, is they're hiding, though. They're repeating and simplifying because they can't do more. It's not because they can do the simplification, because they're not doing it right. They just can't go beyond that. Mm-hmm. And they're holding themselves back by not focusing on the basics, really. Right.
And this is within all genres, all styles. There's always that entry level and people get complacent. I've gotten to here, I'm okay. I can, put it on my wall and but how do we all right, great.
Well, I think that's good. I think it's good, but just recognizing it, this is my level and this is where I want to stay at. So before we move on to the next part of this, I do really love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide.
Brutal.
Yeah, suicide.
That is a brutal, hurtful thing, Ralph.
What do you mean I can't copy and call it mine? Yeah.
But yeah, if you go to what he means by it, it is about fear versus bravery. It is about doing what's been done versus pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Which I think is really the root of all of this. So it's fear. People don't want to look bad. They don't want to put their real work in front of other people out of fear.
Exactly.
They don't want people to know that they suck. So
And
they
it's
do
very
the
difficult.
thing that they've mastered.
Because we all know how great it feels to make a beautiful painting, and how hurtful, or piece of art, and how hurtful it is internally to make a bad piece of art or something that doesn't work.
Mhm.
But we have to be willing to take those risks, and in fact, we have to invite those risks. We have to invite failure, which I think can kind of move us forward in this discussion a little bit here.
Yeah, I think
Most
so.
definitely.
And usually these kind of situations come up when a person is confronted with their own inadequacies, right? The fear of my inadequacy as an artist. I mean, no artist ever has gotten rid of their fear, their inadequacies. I mean, this is part of the master's journey, right? We're always going to have inadequacies inadequacies in some place or some form or fashion, and trying to move forward on that. So when you come up to a person and you say, yeah, your proportions are off, or this is blah, 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 and they say it's my style, it's not that they're telling you that this is the way I want to do it. It's more as a comment on themselves. Oh, I don't want to hear that I'm not doing it really well, because I feel that this painting or drawing or whatever is really awesome. I did a really good job on it, this kind of thing. But just kind of understanding that they have so much further to go. And it kind of gets back into, mindset kind of idea, where you're kind of stuck into this certain style thing, but you can grow out of it. And when you confront someone with that, they are kind of afraid to grow back to fear, this kind of thing.
I sold a painting early on in college for a decent amount of money, a couple $100, which, in college felt like a lot. And I was telling my instructor, who had helped me paint the painting, and he's like, "That's the most dangerous thing you've ever done." He's like, selling that first painting can really stifle your growth, because now you are chasing that a little bit. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And you need to keep growing. You need to keep going beyond, and not chasing sales and what you're getting praised for early on.
Exactly. That reminds me of Andrew Wyeth, one of my most favorite artists, right? His very first show was a sellout. You look at Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, right? And she has a whole TED Talk on this, where she had just crazy success for this book, and people are looking at her like, oh no, your next book's going to suck. That's what happens. How do you chase that success? But Andrew Wyeth, I mean, he constantly evolved. What's his name? Ziggy Stardust. Oh man, I said it before. Lost the name. David Bowie. Yeah. Cut that out.
Yeah, constantly evolving. Constantly evolving.
Okay.
All right. So the issue of the weaknesses that seems to be cropping up has been pretty well defined now. It's really fear and laziness on your path of mastery or growth. But how do we fix that? How can we have people develop their styles in a natural, productive, and not forced way? I think that's the real issue that we need to try to find some sort of closure with. I've done a lot of reading on the topic. I have tried to communicate this to a few tattooing apprentices, that it just doesn't seem to stick, though. So I'm actually excited to see where this goes. My take on what style actually is really related to language learning, specifically writing. We've talked about this a couple of times, I do believe, but each medium is like a different language that you pick up, or a different dialect. But when you learn any art or craft, you start with the basics. So it's like learning your alphabet. Then you move on to more complicated topics. So it's like learning how to spell. Then you move into grammar, punctuation, paragraphs, novels. You know, you can take it as far as you want with language. And the way I picked up drawing was very similar. I'd copy things, and then I'd start to learn the principles, which is like grammar. Then I'd start to learn composition, which is like paragraphs or books. You know, you take it further and further. But through all of that, I think style evolves as something similar to your individual handwriting. So it's something that you develop naturally by copying and learning and combining things. That's my take on it.
I love that. I think that's great. I think that's a very astute and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I love that too. I think having that understanding that I'm in the copy phase and that there's more than just this. Like, this is part of it, right? I'm learning French right now on Duolingo, which is awesome, by the way, not paid for. I'm learning French, and honestly, it's just a copy. You know, you parrot everything, but I know eventually I'm going to have to come up with my own phrases because I want to say things to my wife or say things to the people around here. But having that understanding that you're in the copy phase and you have ways to grow, I think is a really good solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it applies for music especially, you know, learning the notes and the keys. And it's interesting that within two-dimensional or, you know, visual arts, that we don't think the same way a lot of the time. People just want to skip to the end. And they don't have that, oh, I need to learn the fundamentals. I need to learn what letters are. I need to learn how to put a sentence together before. Why style first?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing.
And as soon as you were saying that, you know, I was thinking about, I think of sports, because this is where I compare my artwork to all the time is, you know, when you're playing football as a kid, you want to make the touchdown. You don't want to give the ball up. You're just going to go for the touchdown all the time, right? But if you want to be a professional at what you're doing, you learn all the fundamentals, the footwork, you know, how to post up, you know, all the words that I don't know as far as sports are concerned. But if we made that kind of combination with how you are in your creative life and how you would perform in sports life, this is probably a closer idea to being a professional and learning the process from A, B, C, and D, you know, how you move through it, you know, this kind of thing.
That's awesome. That is.
So how do we go about approaching that how do we go about dealing with that?
Yeah. I mean, most of the content that I've read on it is really similar in nature. So Austin Kleon in Steal Like an Artist refers to it as art genetics. Yeah, fantastic.
Art genetics.
So the main premise of the book Steal Like an Artist is find the people that you want to influence you, copy their work, take what works from their work, which you learn by copying. So it's like, oh, I really like the way his line quality is. I really like the way he uses really dark darks with high contrast up against just stark white, you know. And you take what you enjoy and that you're able to execute and integrate it into your own work. Stan Prokopenko and Marshall Vandruff in the Draftsman podcast, they did an entire episode on art parents, which is just finding your mentors so that they can influence your work. And then I really like Steve Houston's take on this. And Chris, being a huge Steve Houston fan, I'm going to let you take that one. I'm going to volley it to you.
Yeah, every time you do this, I tend to go into an announcer voice, but I'm not going to do it right now. Steve Houston says, authentically pleasing mistakes that become intentional with repetition and refinement.
That's sort of a paraphrase. It's not exactly the way he said it, but it made a lot of sense to me. I think the best way to think about that is you're intentionally making these mistakes. So this removes the, oh, it's my style excuse. If it's something that you do intentionally in your art and it's aesthetically pleasing, You can't, it's not hiding anymore.
And he's making his own mistakes. He's not making other people's mistakes intentionally.
Right.
Exactly.
These are things that evolved. You know what I mean? It was, yeah, it's, again, going back to the manga, it's not big eyes and, you know, big heads and flat shapes, because that probably was a mistake at one point in somebody's work that got replicated over, you know, all these years. But they were his own mistakes that he got by painting over and over and over. And I mean, Steve Houston is such a recognizable art form that is all his own. I mean, you walked into a gallery and he had one painting, you know, out of hundreds, you'd go, yep, that's his.
Yeah.
And what is it about it? It's hard to pinpoint. You know, it's got all the energy and the brushwork, but it's his, and you know that. And I bet you if we look back through his history, or if he was willing to share it, you would see that it was a slow evolution of becoming, his Steve Houstonness had to slowly unveil itself even to him.
He did unveil it at one point. I listened to a lot of his talks on YouTube and things like that, and his style is basically, he took Rembrandt, the colors of Rembrandt, the kind of like glow of,
Sure.
like this kind of heavenly glow, along with the energy of someone else, I forget. And then he put it with boxing and people working, and now he's on to something else. So he combined other influences, but the important part of that is he translated it. You know, it moved through him in some point. And there's one thing that you said, Josh, that, you know, aesthetically pleasing. I think you could take that out of the equation completely. You know, we've said multiple times, it has to look good, or, you know, what looks bad. I think in art today, that doesn't really matter anymore. It's a subjective kind of idea, right? If it's pleasing to you and you know that you're not just straight up copying, like if you've translated these different art parents' influences through yourself and made something you feel is original, that's really what matters. Whether Josh or Mike or Chris Bevan likes it, who cares, you know? Create something all your own, this kind of thing.
Which is not easy. It takes time. You have to let that evolution happen. And I think that's kind of going full circle of, we all want to rush to that end of making something all our own, when we need to spend the time and effort to arrive at it. And ask good questions of yourself and your work and the work of others. Again, what is it that I like? What is it that interests me? You know, subject, style, materials, all those things are going to go in. So, you know, every time my wife and I go into a gallery, we each pick our own favorite painting, and we don't tell the other until we're about ready to leave. And it was really interesting. I mean, we did this in part because of collecting art, which we've done for a long time, but in part too, to see what the other person liked and what their interests were. And then we would dissect it and say, what was it about that painting that you liked? Was it the subject? Was it because, you know, it had this, or was it the colors? Was it the design? Was it the brushwork? And, you know, as we've evolved as art lovers and artists, we can get deeper into that discussion. But that really helped me to go, oh, you know what? I really do like landscapes. I really do like atmosphere and, you know, different things. So asking those questions of yourself slowly over time, I think, can really aid you, as well as the creation, spending the time creating the work.
Wow, that was so good. Such an important point there. You know, if you want to get over your own little hemisphere of style, you know, you're stuck in this bubble, get out there, look at the other artists around you, get into some books. You know, you think you like manga, that's cool, but look at all the manga, all the different styles. Start getting into comic book art. Look at Kim Jong-gi, branch out from there. Frank Brainwind, you know, look at Bernie Wrightson, you know, start really looking at, and then don't just look at it and go, oh, that's cool, flip to the next, that's cool, flip to the next. I love what you said, Mike, where you and your wife look at a painting and you go, well, why do I like this? Ask the question of yourself. Why do you get that kind of feeling from something? It's like, whoa, that's awesome. What? And then ask, why do I feel this? And then you start thinking in like an artistic mindset. Within that, you can come up with your own solutions. Another thing I want to go off on this, we've talked about mistakes multiple times in the context of them being positive. And they are, because how most styles or most different things happened in the art world today, well, throughout history, has been originally seen as a mistake, right? And I've always harped upon the idea that anything that you do within your art can be used later on. For example, oh, it's not working on this drawing when I use X material. It looks bad in this way. You learn something that you can use on a different drawing that would probably work perfectly. That mistake can become something absolutely wonderful. All it takes is for you to show up every day and get to work, make those mistakes.
Get comfortable. Being uncomfortable is a super important thing to remind yourself in the studio.
Yeah.
Pushing
Definitely.
yourself, letting things happen. Yeah.
Get over that fear. Again, we come back to fear. Get us back on track, Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just letting you guys take that one away because, Michael, that was a great riff. Like,
sorry, Josh. I there's something you mentioned in a previous conversation we had, and I'm hoping you will be willing to share it with us. So something about your influence map. I really love the idea of that, and I would love to hear more of what that means.
The influence map was a meme that went around the art social media community years ago, and I decided to do my own whenever it happened, but I used it in a way that was a little different. I mean, everything we've talked about so far has been about finding influences to develop your style in a more natural way. So I wanted to use my influence map to do that, and I'll share my screen here. So my influence map is just full of some of my favorite pieces from some of my favorite artists.
Lots of good illustrations.
Well, Leyendecker is actually one of the more recent additions to my influence map. I love the way he simplifies things and chunks them up, I think is the best way I can describe it. So his brushwork is very chunky. You have clearly defined edges and very graphic hair shapes. And I love the way he simplifies the form in a way that is aesthetically pleasing to me. Mucha, I love Art Nouveau in general. Some of my favorite tattoo artists are very much Art Nouveau inspired. So this is Mitchell Allendale, or Sneaky Mitch. And then Justin Hartman. Video game art has always had a really big impact on me. So I love the concept art books that you can pick up. Love them, because those are some of the best concept artists out there. They're in a production field, so they have to get good by producing a high quantity of work. It's like the 50 pounds equals an egg conversation. So they get good by doing a lot. Louis Royo, one of my favorites. Steve Houston's illustrations. So I love his drafting techniques. I have immense respect for his painting techniques. They're just mind-blowing. Love it. But I am more fascinated by his drawings. I love seeing Steve Houston's drawings in charcoal. It's just like, so beautiful and smooth. But yeah, so comic book art, another huge influence. This is actually Jim Lee doing fan art of Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. So comic book and video game. Love it. And then Da Vinci, his sketches fascinate me because as beautiful as his paintings are, and as timeless as his paintings are, his sketches to me are more revealing of his thought process.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then role-playing game fantasy art, can't get me away from it.
So what I love here is you've got, artwork that's 300 years old and 3 days old in here, and you're not only drawing for multiple artists, you're drawing for multiple generations of artists and multiple genres, and yeah, if you put these all into a bag, mixed them up, you might get Josh. Is that right? Is that what this kind of does?
Pretty much. So I've done master studies for most of these artists. That's how I approached the influence map. Like this one's actually hanging on my wall at the studio, the master study I did of it. And it's not something that I'm ever going to sell. It's something I did for me, but I love how brave Jim Lee is with black. Just black. And it's something that I've always struggled with. I always struggled to get enough of a high contrast dark into my drawings, paintings, and tattoos. So I did that master study specifically to address that weakness. And it's hanging on my wall as a really good reminder. It's like, could this use more black? Yes. The answer is always yes.
It's really awesome. That's the first time. I think you've showed me your influence map before. And for individuals that aren't seeing that, basically it's a really nice laid out selection of different artists, like the paintings, drawings that you love, and in a grid format. Now, I didn't know that that's what an influence map was. Now tell me, Josh, does it have to be like a certain number? Do you want to keep it like below a certain number of pieces, or can it be just any number?
I don't think how you do it matters so much as, that you just do it. So
Okay.
Michael was showing us before the recording started that he's got journals full of just inspiration.
Like high school, and then then a road trip I took around Australia, backpacking around Australia, and I think this is early college days. And those were I'm just literally cutting out magazines and pictures. I mean, oops, not showing it on the camera there, but anything. I mean, like I just, for some reason at that point in my life, thought that was an interesting image, tore it out, threw it in. Things are just glued, tape. There's notes in here, nice. Just completely random. But yeah, that reminded me of that. And it was, those just sit on the bottom shelf in my studio, but they're interesting to look back at and just go, oh, this makes sense in hindsight. Look at how this little discovery influenced future work. And just kind of keeping track of that. And now that my daughter's 16 and, on her artistic journey, who knows where she'll end up with it. But I urge her to do the same thing. And she's actually she's pretty diligent about just tearing out things that are interesting. And they could be design, they could be clothing, they could be artists, whatever it is, but just things that are interesting. And then, like I said, asking those questions of why. What is it about it? So yeah, that's really great. And you were just saying that, Josh, like, oh, this is about his use of black. That is something that's exciting to you, interesting, and a good reminder to you. So I think that's a fantastic tool, influence maps. I may suggest that to students going forward. I think that's really a neat idea. So thank you.
Well, it goes back to your gallery visits too. So what's slightly different about the influence map versus the journals is every piece that I put on my influence map, or every artist. So sometimes the piece isn't necessarily what inspires me, but it's the artist who did the piece that inspires me. Like Da Vinci's sketchbooks. I love Da Vinci's sketches. As far as doing master studies of them, maybe not, but seeing one of Da Vinci's sketches doesn't necessarily make me want to do a master study of the sketch, but it makes me want to think like Da Vinci was thinking when he did the sketch. So every piece on here was deliberately picked for the reason I like it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect.
So when you're asking your question, why do I like this? Is it the line work? Is it the brush strokes? Is it the use of light? Is it the atmosphere? That's sort of what the influence map is for me. I pick it, put it there, and then it serves as a reminder, if I remember to keep it nearby. It serves as a reminder of what I want to accomplish. And if it works for me, I use it. If it doesn't work for me, then at least I learned it doesn't work for me.
I think the next step in that is, okay, you have that, you're kind of grabbing different ideas, different elements from that. And then how do you mix in what makes you, your authenticity, or I guess your onlyness. So it's kind of a hybrid of all these things, plus Josh, plus Chris, plus whatever it is that you're bringing to the table. And that's an interesting challenge.
Well, I want to take over on this one.
Okay.
Because I'm deeply involved with, I have to move my cat. Cat interruption every podcast. So I'm deeply involved with getting in touch with yourself. I know that is probably a statement most individuals don't want to hear. Like, oh man, I have to do some psychological research, right? Figure out who I am. Well, this is how you figure out your own unique style. There is only one you on the planet. Like biologically, scientifically, you go, okay, fine, whatever, Chris. There's only one me on the planet. No one else looks exactly like me. How in the hell is that going to help me in my artwork? Only you have your experiences from childhood until who you are right now. That combination of history is only done once. So not only do you have the only biology that you have, but you also have that history. Those come together in a concoction that is so different from anything else on the planet that it could fuel your life with creativity completely. And that's all you need. And it's continually growing. And this is part of the influence map. See, Josh, I didn't call it an influence map. It was just a big bank of images that I continually collect, and I've collected for years. Just a tip on that, Mike, I love it's wonderful that you have physical things. So that's one way to do it. You have physical stuff. You pile them in a box or something, or in a book, and you keep, you thumb through them or whatever. Josh, you have like a single image, it looked like, of like your influence map. What I do is, if I'm on the internet and I see an amazing image of art, I'll say copy paste, copy the image from the website, and it goes into a folder. And I make sure that I put the name of the artist as the title, of that image. And then that folder is actually a screensaver for my computer that's on random. So every now and then, when I'm not at my computer, it goes to its screensaver, and I'll see some amazing motivational art. And I'm like, let's get back to work, because holy crap, Edouard Vuillard is absolutely wonderful, or Fession, or Guillermo, or Herbert Morton, all over the place.
I do use Pinterest, really quickly as that. Pinterest is my kind of like, I'm lacking a little bit of motivation, or I'm even just taking an inspiration break. And I'll just kind of jump on there, and I think I've got like 40,000 images saved onto Pinterest now.
Yeah.
But it's a lot, and they're all categorized into tonalist and whatever different genres, styles, mediums, everything else, colors. I've even got color inspiration pages. So that's just a cool place for me to go and look up. And a lot of times I think of it as, in painting or in art, we basically create a problem. We create an issue. We create a challenge for ourselves. And the cool thing, and what makes art, in my opinion, is that there's 1,000 million answers. None of them are right. None of them are wrong. It's just 1,000 ways to solve this solution. And sometimes if I do get a little stuck, I'll go, oh, how would Da Vinci approach this? How would, name the artist deal with this? And you can quickly go online and see and go, yeah, that's a solution. Is it the one I want for this? I don't know. But you can, there's a lot. It's interesting to have those conversations with artists in the past, or artists that you maybe never met in person, just through their work.
Yeah, that is so true. Answering the question, and that's what we're doing all the time. Answering some kind of question, either from within ourselves. I'm going to get back to, getting in touch with your own emotions, your own identity, your onlyness, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But usually you're answering some question. So let's say you pull in Frank Brangwyn and Edward Hopper, two of and Andrew Wyeth, Andrew Wyeth, I love Andrew Wyeth, this kind of thing. And you you say, well, I don't want to emulate this person, but what do I like about it? And why do I like about it? And what question am I going to answer within myself, right? So you not only think about just their technique, but you think about why they're doing it. You know, why did he paint images from around, you know, his area? You know, same with Hopper. You know, they're probably around the same era, I believe. And through those questions, you get in touch of, you know, the answers that you want to come up with for yourself. Well, I really love my cats, so I want to paint them in a certain way. Or I figured out through my influence map that figures is a predominant thing in most of my work. Even though I'm working on some still lifes thing right now, but I love figures, so I'm going to go for that, this kind of thing. But having that translation through you is important. But and it's not in an inauthentic way. It's a more authentic way. You're not constantly looking for something new, right? You're trying to delve within yourself. You know, you're trying to. You don't look outside. You reveal from the inside. This kind of thing, which I think is really important. Because I did that. I mean, if you're constantly trying to look for a new thing to do in art, you're always going to fail, because it's not out there. You can't say, oh, no one's ever done, you know, a home in this way. You know, I'm going to do that and just do it because it's new, you know, or paint it in that way or whatever. You'll end up with something that you really don't care about, number one. And then number two, someone's probably already done it. And then, you know, if you don't care about it, you're not really going to do it well, this kind of thing. So getting a deep understanding of who you are, your uniqueness, and being okay with it, being okay with showing that to the public. Well, if you had an awful childhood and all your paintings are dark and black and awful, you know, in some way, maybe, you know, take it to the nth degree. That's your work, you know, you're getting in touch with yourself in some way. And then, but this doesn't work in certain instances. You have to come at it in a different way. Let me give you an example. So I work on a project called Phantom Fitness for my wife, where basically she's writing a book and she wants to combine fandoms such as Star Wars, Star Trek, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings and everything, and the love that people have for those fandoms with exercise. So it's so much more fun if I can do a Lord of the Rings exercise rather than just going to the gym and running on a stupid treadmill, right? And part of that was she wants a lot of visuals in the book. And I said, well, let me do a bunch of drawings of them. So it was a lot of, honestly, copying of images. So I'm drawing, you know, Snape from Harry Potter. I'm drawing Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. You know, all kinds of individuals. But I think I started with Superman and then Wonder Woman, and it was just straight copies. But then eventually I got to Spock, and I was drawing Spock, and I'm like, okay, I'm in a constraint here. I can't be completely original with this because it has to be Spock. It has to be Leonard Nimoy on a page, okay? So how can I bring my own authenticity into it? So I started thinking about who Spock was, right? What kind of individual is this person? How can I describe him as an individual on a page? Notice I'm asking questions, and I'm going to come up with answers with technical kind of means. The answer to the question was basically Spock is intellectual, he's logical, he's straight edge. You know, what does a logical line look like? You know, what does straight edge line look like? It's a straight edge. And this was one of the easier ones. So I drew Spock in nothing but straight lines. You know, all the shading, everything is just perfectly straight lines, everything. You know, it's a getting close to line decker, that kind of structural approach. And I was like, wow, this is what I need to explore. And so then I moved on to other individuals such as Martin Luther King Jr., you know, and I came up with things like energetic, powerful, you know, a stone in a river of negativity. how do you describe that when using someone's face, right? I mean, my mind was kind of like exploding. How do you do this? And these questions will send you off into something that you would never have thought. And that's another way of doing it. So you could take art influences, translate them through you, get in touch with who you are so you can make that translation. Or if you have a structural kind of approach where, let's say, I want to work for a company and I'm doing these kind of illustrations. Well, how can you look deeper into that illustration where you're not just drawing this manga individual, but maybe you want to figure out a storyline behind that individual, who they are, right? And well, this person wouldn't all be happy-go-lucky, whatever. You'd have something further into that, and it would take you more into it.
So for further listening on that topic, you could listen to episode 5.
Did I repeat?
Oh yeah. There was a lot of information about motive there from episode 5. We had the super in-depth motive. I'm not going to cut it out because it might be a good hook to get people to listen to episode 5 of the You Creative show, which is now the CreateQuest Podcast.
Right. You're right. Yeah, I was talking about motive, but that's one thing that what is your motive? What do you want to say? Ask the questions.
I think you just described how to marry motive with style, though, which is really awesome because.
Bam! Did I just take two things and combine them into one?
You did
through me.
You did, but here's the thing. After our conversation on motive, I was under the impression that motive completely trumps style in your opinion, and I was going to fight you on it because for a commercial artist or a production artist, style is important for their career, maybe not their individual art projects or art form, but for their career, style actually is pretty important because your style is what, for a production artist especially, then I won't even go into commercial, but for a production artist, I'm not saying you should force a style. I'm not saying that you have to develop a style, but you will be recognized for your handwriting. And that is what people want, is your handwriting. I'm not saying fit yourself into a box and sell that box. I'm saying develop your handwriting and let it get noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were plenty of old illustrators that made good careers off illustration that we don't remember their names at all, and they did each job well. But then there was the artists that had their style, and that we got to know it, and it became their calling card. And they're the ones that we're still studying. Those are the line deckers and the other artists throughout time that they were literally getting hired to be them.
Exactly.
To bring themselves to the project or bring their style to the project versus a gun for hire.
Yeah.
I can draw anything, any style.
And actually, since talking about Steve Houston's paintings, you said you walk into a gallery and you see a Steve Houston painting hanging on the wall, you just know that he has developed a style, but he's still able to communicate his motive. So I think this is sort of the marriage between the two. And looking at Steve Houston's paintings now, I can definitely see a heavy Leyendecker influence there, since looking at his paintings and just comparing it to the influence map. I was like, whoa, all right, brush strokes.
I'm going to agree with you and I'm going to disagree.
Awesome.
Or no, it's going to be agreement and cautionary tale, because this is still fear, right? This is still fear that you're talking about. Look at John Singer Sargent is a really good example of this. I know most oil painters are like, Sargent, oh my God.
That's my copy back there, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can see it. Okay. So John Singer Sargent, he had a style, right? And he sold because of that style. I mean, he was the preeminent portrait painter of the time. And if you do the research on it, you can look at the actual individuals that he painted and the painting, and it's like, wow, he made everybody look like a freaking movie star. That's wonderful. Of course I want him to paint me. It makes me look good. That kind of thing. But the problem that you can run into is if you're dependent upon that style, especially to make money, what's going to happen is you can stunt your growth, right? You can say, well, I can't do anything else. I need to make money. I need to make the money to do this. So I have to do this constantly. What did John Singer Sargent do? I mean, he got enough money at some point where he did what he really loved, which was watercolor paintings, you know. And that's where his true mastery lied, was really within that, because that's what he loved to do. He did the portraits just for money, this kind of thing. And that's fine. But if it saps your energy from what you love to do, be careful of that. We talked about David Bowie. Well, I forgot his name, but we talked about David Bowie, and he was super successful. Then he's like, you know what? I'm done with that. That's Bowie from the past. I'm going to do something completely different. The Beatles. I mean, come on. I mean, they're like the perfect example for this whole style thing. We were talking about, you know, put in the work, stop being lazy. They did 1,200 shows before they were even big, right? And when they got big, what were they singing? Like pop tunes? And then eventually it was this.
The Beatles.
Yeah, then they became the Beatles.
Started as a cover band. I think that is such a great thing to keep in mind.
Cover band to changing the world of music, you know, this kind of thing. So even though they were making a bunch of money doing this one thing, they got in touch with themselves, what they needed to do to grow as an artist, to enjoy the life that they're in, to move forward, not just monetarily, but psychologically, individually, in every way. And I think that's what's really important. So is style important in that way? Yeah, in some way, but be very careful with it. Be very careful.
So what advice would you give to people going forward? You know, let's say a young up and coming artist, or somebody who's mid-career but still doesn't feel like they've adopted a style or found their style yet. What advice do you give to them if you were able to have a conversation like this?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Me personally, I would say don't worry about style. Be happy when you develop one, but don't get comfortable with it. For now, focus on the fundamentals. And when you think you're really good at the fundamentals, go back to the fundamentals.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's good.
And when you think you have a style, go back to the fundamentals. You can never do too much practice on the fundamentals. Copy the people you love and go back to the fundamentals.
I'm going to take this back to sports. I love the idea of Kobe Bryant practicing 4 a.m. in the morning, every morning, the basic fundamentals of basketball every single morning. And then a reporter asked him, he's like, you're just doing the most basic stuff. You're the greatest player in basketball right now. Why are you doing this? And he's like, the reason why I'm so good is because I mastered these fundamentals. And that's what's really important. You can only really develop, I feel, your own style until you can get all of that jargon in a place in your head to let the creativity flow. Okay? I've experienced this several times in my life, not very much, but there's been several times where I'm in front of a figure, before COVID, when I could actually draw from the actual figure, when I knew form, I knew proportion, I know line, you know, I've done it for years and years and years. And a few drawings, I wasn't thinking about any of that, and I was just feeling into the art itself. It was one of the most spiritual moments I've ever had. And that's what I want to try and get back to. And those drawings I still have, and they're probably the most original drawings that I've ever done. Not a copy, not anything. But getting in touch with that, as a beginning artist, you have to give it time. I mean, that was 5 years of constant practice, at least, like every single day. And then some days it was, you know, a minimum of 30 minutes every day for 5 or 6 years. And then some days it was like 4 to 8, this kind of thing. This is the kind of time frame you have to look forward to. So if you're just starting out, Josh is right. Don't focus on style. Focus on really mastering those fundamentals to a point where they could just kind of go into the back of your head and you know them without thinking about them, and then continue to practice them.
How about you, Michael? What's your take?
Well, I've got a couple different takes, and these are things that I've used in my own art career, and both to justify what I'm doing and to look deeper into what I'm doing. I just love atmosphere and light in my paintings, and I've often felt like, man, is this a crutch? Am I over replicating this? And for me, I had to, in going, no, this is immensely interesting to me. I'm continuously searching, digging deeper, pushing this thing about my art. And so in that search, it took me back to my childhood. I love marshes, creeks, swamps, nature. And so going back to my childhood was really interesting, going, okay, this has been a lifelong pursuit. I didn't realize it. And then in my early years, I was an illustrator and was selling my illustrations through galleries. And on the side, I was doing landscape paintings. I really loved doing them, but they were for me. They were a treat. When I got done with my illustration work, I got to do a painting for myself. When a gallery came to pick up some of the work, they asked about the landscapes, asked if they could show them, and lo and behold, they sold. People evidently gravitate towards work you enjoy doing. It was great. I was like, oh, I guess I'm retired. I'm doing the work that I wanted to do at retirement already. I'm getting, making a living from it, or, making money from it. And so it's it's two-sided, right? I'm going back to my childhood, things that interested me, things that I like doing, and to my retirement. What would I do if money wasn't an issue? What would I do? What do I want to paint for me? And so it's kind of a interesting way to look at it, but I think for some people that might be a question I would ask of them. What would you paint if money wasn't an issue? What would you paint if social norms, if you weren't worried about what people thought? So another thing about retirement, right? Like once you're retired, I could picture myself walking around in very tacky Hawaiian shirts or whatever else, and social norms be damned. This is how I look at the grocery store, because I want to. I don't know what I'll look like, but what would you do if you didn't have to, if you weren't thinking about those things, if you weren't worried about society so much?
Yeah, because that is so true, because style is kind of born out of society. The influence of everything that's around you. Well, I need to have some kind of style. It has to look this way or it has to look that way. I feel like we're getting back in touch with yourself. What do you love? What do you like to do? Do that.
Do that. Make the work you wish was out there.
Right.
Make the album you want to hear. Write the book you wish you could read.
So to wrap it all up, I think what we want people to really do is cultivate the influences that you love, whether it's artists, subjects, specific styles. Cultivate the stuff you love, and to hell with everyone else. But at the same time, focus on the fundamentals, because without an understanding of the fundamentals, your style will not develop. It will be something that's forced, and you don't want that. And more than anything, do the work. No matter what, keep doing the work. Because if you don't do the work, again, it's not going to develop. You'll just be imposing an undeveloped style onto everything you do.
Exactly.
Is that about it?
Well, and get comfortable with failure. Love
Yes.
failure, because every single failure that you have could be that hint of amazing style that will turn you into the next Van Gogh.
Perfect. Yeah, that is a nutshell. If you only have 3 minutes to listen to this show, skip to the end. That's perfect, concise.
I know.
what this whole show was about. I think you guys nailed it.
Yeah. Perfect.
I think we nailed it. Don't exclude yourself.
Good job.
I mean, we even had to promote you at the beginning. You can toot your own horn a little bit, sir.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Hey there, thanks for watching the CreateQuest show. It's our mission to empower creatives to improve the world, and hopefully we helped you do that. If you want to keep up with the show, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. And if you want to follow everything we're doing, make sure you visit createquest.net and subscribe to the newsletter. So thanks again. We'll see you next time. Now go out and be creative.